A wrestler's gimmick can make or break their career. Here are 10 wrestlers who were supposed to have a different gimmick but ended up with different ones. Number 1. Edge as Val Venis. This one actually makes sense in hindsight, as Adam Copeland, aka Edge, played Sexton Hardcastle on the indie scene before hitting the big time in the WWF. Hardcastle's edgy character was part of the sex and violence tandem with Joey Legend, which could have caused the WWF to consider him for the Val Venis role. When you look at Edge's run as the rated R superstar, it's easy to see him playing the Val Venis character perfectly. Fortunately, the wrestling gods had other plans and Sean Morley played Val Venis, giving Adam Copeland time to shine as Edge alongside longtime friend and storyline brother Christian. Number 2. The $1 Million Men. Ted DiBiase played the $1 Million Man character superbly, reflecting 1980s greed as personified in one of the WWF's most hated heels. As longtime fans know, the WWF pumped big bucks into the character, putting DiBiase in the finest hotels, shuttling back and forth in limousines, and giving him loads of cash to overtip when he went to restaurants. However, there were several contenders for the character. One considered was veteran grappler Nick Bockwinkel, a scientific heel who held the AWA World Championship on several occasions. Unfortunately, Bockwinkel was in the twilight of his career, and it's questionable how much longevity he would have had in that role. Next was founding Four Horsemen member Tully Blanchard, a skilled technician and talented talker. Blanchard was custom made for the role, but didn't make the cut. Finally, Nature Boy Ric Flair was also considered for the role. But let's face it, Slick Rick is the kind of wrestler who needs no gimmick. Number 3. Rob Van Dam as GLACIER. There's no denying Eric Bischoff had some great concepts for Monday Night Nitro during his time steering WCW. Whether it was the New World Order, the Cruiserweight division, or Bill Goldberg, Bischoff knew how to grab and keep the fans' attentions. However, the jury's still out on the group known as Blood Runs Cold, a Mortal Kombat ripoff that started with the character Sub-Zero, or we mean GLACIER. WCW threw a fortune into the character's costume and entrance, but it was overshadowed by the New World Order. Ray Lloyd played GLACIER, but the role was originally offered to ECW's Rob Van Dam. The whole effing show was offered the role, but turned it down. Undeterred, WCW persisted, telling Rob Van Dam they had an entire roster of characters he could choose from, but Rob still turned down the role. Number 4. Bryan Clark as the Ringmaster. Bryan Clark enjoyed a long career in the squared circle, working a number of gimmicks including 3 Mile Island survivor Adam Bomb, and as a member of WCW's Blood Runs Cold faction Mortis. However, did you know that Clark was reportedly offered the gimmick of the Ringmaster, a character that went to Steve Austin in his days before his incredible rise to stardom as Stone Cold Steve Austin? According to Clark, they actually pitched me the Ringmaster gimmick, which was later pitched to Steve Austin. So I'm guessing that they had like a catalogue of these names, you know? And they said, no, you're gonna be Adam Bomb. I was like, okay, because I liked Adam Bomb better than the Ringmaster. Yeah, that's one of those things that they came up with. I don't know if Vince and Linda sit at home at night, have a few drinks and come up with these good and bad gimmicks. Who knows what the hell they do. Number 5. Alexa Bliss as a Southern Princess. While Alexa Bliss fans likely recall the fairy character she played in NXT, they might not know about the role the WWE had originally planned for her. Footage exists of Bliss paired with Scott Dawson in a gimmick reminiscent of Nydia and Jamie Noble's pairing as a trailer trash duo. Reportedly, the WWE envisioned Bliss as a rich country brat who guided the career of a good old boy wrestler. Footage exists of the two practicing their roles during their time at the WWE Performance Center, and given her success as Alexa Bliss, it's possible she could have pulled off the character, but we like things the way they turned out. Number 6. Jinder Mahal, the Hall Monitor. Many a wrestler faces the grim news they've been future endeavoured, but as Jinder Mahal's career demonstrates, that can be nothing more than a speed bump on the way to future WWE success. After Mahal was released in 2014, he hit the independent circuit. However, life after the WWE was dismal, as Mahal discussed during a 2017 appearance on Chris Jericho's Talk is Jericho podcast. I had hit rock bottom. I was drinking all the time, and I was eating and not watching what I eat. I was actually like 260 pounds, just fat. I'm sure there are pictures of me just working the indies and not caring. And then one day, I stopped drinking completely. I was like, that's it, I'm going to start getting in shape. I stopped drinking and I got the meal prep from Nutrition Solutions, so shout out to Nutrition Solutions. And I just started dieting and training hard, and literally, I lost 20 pounds. I was about 240 from the 260 I started with. And literally with 2 months of me doing this, the WWE called me. Mahal's WWE return was nothing short of spectacular, with Mahal going from enhancement talent to WWE champion less than a year after his return. Things might have been different had the WWE gone with its original plan for Mahal, that of Jinder Mahal, Mahal Monitor. Reportedly, there was talk of Mahal playing a self-appointed authority figure backstage, a role similar to Baron Corbin. Thankfully for Jinder, the Mahal Monitor gimmick never materialized, and things turned out much better. Number 7. The Ultimate Warrior as Big Van Vader. While fans often associate Japanese wrestling with a focus on technical excellence, promoters in the land of the rising sun have always made exceptions for larger-than-life wrestlers, whether it was Hulk Hogan or the Road Warriors. In 1987, Jim Hellwig was working in World Class Championship Wrestling as the Dingo Warrior, impressing fans with his spectacular physique and incredible charisma. Meanwhile, back in Japan, New Japan Pro Wrestling's Antonio Inoki envisioned a monster heel who wore an elaborate helmet that shot out fire and steam, providing a senses-shattering entrance. Legend has it Inoki chose Hellwig as the man who'd play the mysterious and fearsome-looking character, but Hellwig signed with the WWF instead, which had huge plans for him. According to one source, Sid Vicious was also considered, but Inoki went with former AWA behemoth Leon White, whose work as Vader created one of wrestling's most iconic big men. Number 8. Chris Jericho as the Goon. The 1990s saw some truly awful gimmicks in both the WWF and WCW, which is part of the reason ECW proved so popular for fans looking for a wrestling alternative that didn't insult their intelligence. After insipid gimmicks like Duke the Dumpster Droese and Friar Ferguson, WWF fans thought things couldn't sink any lower. However, they'd be wrong, as Vince McMahon lost wrestler after wrestler to WCW, forcing him to create credible opponents for what few stars he had remaining. McMahon had always been a strong proponent of the concept, give them sizzle, not the steak, which is why WWF television traditionally featured largely squash matches. But WCW's Monday Night Nitro defied this policy, resulting in Nitro beating Raw in the ratings. With Nitro giving fans matches normally reserved for house shows or pay-per-views, Vince scrambled to figure out a solution for his ratings woes. This led to the frugal and desperate Vinnie Mac taking whomever he could get and giving them gimmicks along with moderate pushes. The idea would be that fans would think these new wrestlers were stars, thus any match featuring them against an established WWF superstar would be perceived as a marquee match. The problem was Vince's new characters like wrestling plumber TL Hopper were quickly jobbed out, and fans realized these were no stars but cleverly disguised jobbers. Thus, when Vince McMahon's lieutenant Jim Cornette approached a young Chris Jericho about playing the hockey-themed wrestler known as the Goon, the wise beyond his years Jericho saw through McMahon's scheme, realizing it was a road to Jobber City. In his 2005 memoir, A Lion's Tale, he recalled the circumstances. When he called me in Calgary one day if I'd like to come and work for Vince, my heart soared. I figured that he'd finally put in a good word for me and the WWF was going to bring the Lionheart in with a big push. My heart sank to the ground like Icarus when he said, "We're going to introduce a group of wrestlers who aren't necessarily job guys, but not pushed either. They're going to be enhancement guys, and they're going to have gimmicks." Jericho wisely passed on the idea, telling Cornette, "Jimmy, you know I'm not really interested. When the time comes for me to go to the WWF, I want it to be the right way. I'm only 24 and I don't want to rush getting there, especially if it means that I'd be brought in and not given a proper chance." Jericho would build himself up in WCW, while veteran wrestler Wild Bill Irwin portrayed the Goon. Number 9. Owen Hart as the Game. While Owen Hart's wrestling career has been overshadowed by his tragic death at 1999's Over the Edge pay-per-view, Hart was an accomplished technical wrestler whose star continued to rise in the WWF after his breakout feud with older brother Bret during the mid-90s. More than one report has it that the WWF was planning on giving Hart the gimmick of the game, a talented wrestler who possessed the physical and psychological attributes to become a main eventer. The gimmick could have been the last piece of the puzzle in pushing the Black Hart from the upper card to the main event, but sadly, we'll never know whether Hart would have taken the game character to the same heights as Hunter Hearst Helmsley would. And number 10, Shane Douglas as the Heartbreak Kid. Given Shane Douglas's contempt for Shawn Michaels, Wrestlelamia can't help but marvel at the sheer irony of this rumour. Shane Douglas captured the wrestling world's attention when he won the NWA World Heavyweight Championship, only to toss it aside in disgust and put over the Eastern Championship Wrestling title, a belt that quickly became better known as the Extreme Championship Wrestling title. Shane would leave ECW for the WWF, taking on the role of Dean Douglas, an evil educator who graded opponents based on their performance. The gimmick was a disaster and plagued by backstage politics, and ultimately Douglas bailed on the WWF. However, several sources indicated that Dean Douglas' character wasn't the first role the WWF had in mind for him. Douglas, who had worked as enhancement talent before in the WWF, had a standout performance at 1991's Royal Rumble, catching the eye of Vince McMahon. If this story is true, McMahon envisioned Douglas for his character, the Heartbreak Kid. Unfortunately, Douglas was unable to sign with the WWF as he was caring for his sick father. Would Douglas have been able to make the Heartbreak Kid role his own, similar to how he did as the franchise in ECW? Let us know what you think, or any of the other gimmicks that were touched upon in this video. As always, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you next time with some more wrestling content.